let's see here. Yesterday we talked about power supplies a little bit. And, well, also a little bit about processors and video cards. And how to increase the performance of your store-bought computer. Now, back to the power supply thing. If you are wanting to upgrade to a heavy lifter in the way of a video card, for example, an AMD R9 280-280X or a GTX 760 through 980, 500 watts is a bare minimum, and you will have to buy one. And as I've stated in a previous video, they can range anywhere from $50 for a really cheap one if you are absolutely pinching pennies because you bought the video card, on up to about $120. Now, the ones that are $120 are going to be 80 plus gold and or platinum. Now, what the 80 plus certification means is at a specific temperature, which I believe is between 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit, to about 40 degrees Celsius. And so that's quite a bit warmer. That's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. You are going to get a minimum of 80% of the power supply's actual power in an efficient manner. Well, what do you mean in an efficient manner? Well, what I mean is a power supply does not, while it may draw X amount of watts from the wall, you may not be getting all of that directly into your computer. And what the 80 plus certification means is that it will use a minimum of 80% of the energy that's being taxed from the wall straight into the system. The higher the rating, the more efficient it is. I personally will not settle for anything less than gold. And the reason for that is that's an 85 to 92% or 85 to 87% efficiency rating, meaning that I am losing very little of the electricity that I'm pulling out of that wall. Well, what if I get a bronze? Then you're going to have 80 to about 82% efficiency. So for you to get the total wattage for your computer, it's going to have to pull in a little bit more out of the wall for you to be able to get all of that electricity that your computer needs. Well then, can't they come up with something better? And well, they have. That's where the platinum, and they have even started, I believe, a diamond rating for the 80 plus certification. Now, platinum is basically 90 plus percent efficient, and they really should do a completely different energy efficiency standard just for that. I mean, if you're going to be a minimum of 90% efficient, then Lord help you. You just need to start a whole new standard. But what happens if you're outside of the thermal threshold of the power supply? Are you going to not be as efficient? Yes, but you're still going to get at least 80% efficiency. The peak efficiency is whenever it's within that very specific thermal threshold. Now, going above or below will only knock you a little bit on the efficiency. Not too terrible, you know. Like I said, gold is 85 to 87. I have 800 watts, and I built my computer myself. I am glad I did not buy the bigger power supply that I thought I was, or I was originally wanting to buy, because then it would just be, I would just be wasting energy. I'm not using anything that would require me to have more power. The maximum power draw of my entire system is around 650 watts. So I am drawing between 700 and 750 watts just so I can have under load the amount of energy. Whenever my computer goes under load and it starts pulling extra energy, it's between 700 and 750 watts. Just so that it can deliver to my system the roughly 650 watts that it requires, which is what I'm trying to emphasize to you whenever it comes to upgrading your video card. If you're wanting to upgrade your video card, the power supply is more or less the heart of your computer. Some people will say it's the processor. Well, yeah, that is kind of true, just like the power supply is kind of the heart. If the processor goes down, the entire system goes down. You know, if you fry the processor, you're not going to fry anything else. Hopefully. It really depends on what causes you to fry the processor. However, if you get a crappy power supply and it decides to do a catastrophic short, then it's going to take not just itself down, it can take down hard drives, it can take out your motherboard, your processor, your RAM, your video cards, basically anything that has electricity flowing to it. If it's bad enough short within the power supply, it'll kill it all. Which is why you should never skimp on the power supply. You should actually cut corners on your processor, depending on what you're wanting to use your processor for, and dedicate that money to the power supply, because getting a quality power supply will save your system from any potential faults further down the road. If yeah, a good power supply will save you a lot of heartbreak and a brain aneurysm later on down the road, especially if you want to upgrade your computer. More parts of it. Starting off with an E-machine, an HP, a Dell, but starting out with one of those box computers that you can walk into Office Depot, Staples, Best Buy, Walmart, wherever. Just walk in, pick one up off the shelf, take it home. It's going to have a PCI Express slot so you can upgrade to a dedicated video card if you want. And they'll have a decent power supply. It will be 80 plus certified, but it won't be like a bronze or a silver, gold, platinum, diamond. It won't be any of those. It'll just be straight up 80 plus certified, which means it's going to be 80 to 81% efficient at within those certain temperature thresholds. Now, whenever you get home, spend an extra $70, get a 500 watt, 80 plus bronze power supply, throw that in there, and then go through and figure out what video card you want to upgrade to. And if you're keeping it kind of tight on the budget for the video card, that's fine. So swapping out the power supply is really the most straightforward thing in the world. There's 4 screws on the back of the case. After you unplug it from the wall, you take out the 4 bolts from the back of the case that's around the power supply. It's the thing that you plug into the wall. Hopefully the case isn't super small, so you can get just a normal sized power supply. More on that later. So you take those 4 bolts out, or screws, unconnect follow all the cables inside the case coming from the power supply that you just unbolted and unscrewed, find out where they're plugged in, and unplug them. The one that goes to the motherboard is a 20 plus 4 pin. It's the only one like it. Everything you unplug, you plug the new, whenever you take out the old power supply, and put the new one in, you just plug everything back in the way you unplugged it. And while you're doing that, work on your cable management. Try to make it as neat and tidy inside as you can, because whenever you put that new video card in, it's going to want some fresh air, and you're going to need to make sure that it has unrestricted airflow. Bolt it in, run your cables, plug everything back in the way you found it, and then you'll see the 6-pin connector that I talked about on your new power supply. You plug that straight into your video card. Unless it requires 8, then you'll have a 6 plus 2, and you just plug it in. That way you have a computer that can play video games that you want to play, and you don't have to have a whole lot of choppy effects. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later.